and they'll be available to help us answer any questions. And it's a pretty long list, so I'll just run down the agencies that are here. We have branch chief. I'm sorry. We have the zoning evaluation division from also from DPD, and we also have representatives from the Fairfax County Department of Transportation and Parks Authority. And Ben Wiles is also here from the Drainsville Supervisor's Office, and he'd asked me in advance to let everyone know that Supervisor John Faust is not available for the start of tonight's meeting, but it is my understanding that he will try to join us when he is free from another commitment. So, and after the staff presentation for the plan amendment, Evan Goldman, representing EYA, who is the potential contract purchaser for the subject property, will be providing a briefing on their proposal for developing the site. Next slide, please. So this is a brief agenda of the items that will be covered during staff's presentation for tonight. We'll first take a look at some background for the site, and then we'll go through the process for amending the comprehensive plan, and we'll take a look at the proposed land use changes with this plan amendment, and then provide an overview of staff's analysis and considerations in reviewing the amendment. And from there, we'll take a look at the remaining schedule for this process. And after we're done, again, Evan Goldman with EYA will give a overview of their proposed their concept for the proposal of developing the property. Next slide, please. So here's some background for the site. It's a 6.73 acre parcel located on the north side of Leesburg Pike and across from George C. Marshall High School. And it's adjacent to the Pemmon Hills subdivision, and also St. Luke's Church, which is on the east side of the property. The site is currently planned for office use and zoned as C2 limited office district, which allows for permitted uses to be developed up to an intensity of 0.5 FAR or floor area ratio. The building the existing building is a circular shaped structure that is used for office uses, and it's located at the center of the property where you see in the map inside of the red pentagon shaped parcel. And this office building was built in 1976, and it has an intensity of approximately 0.57 floor area ratio, or FAR. So this slide takes a look at the board's authorization, which was granted for study of this plan amendment on September 15th of last year. And the board authorization directs staff to consider a comprehensive plan amendment for redevelopment of the site with single family attached residential uses in the form of townhomes at a density of 12 to 16 dwelling units per acre. And the board directed staff to place a priority on the provision of high quality open space on the site, and the plan is also being reviewed concurrently with an application to rezone the property. Next slide, please. Plan is the county's long-range planning instrument, and some of the plan's key purposes are listed in the text box to the left. The policy plan provides general guidance. The comprehensive plan policy plan provides general guidance and goals that are applied on a countywide basis. So the backdrop for this slide shows the comprehensive plan's land use map, and it provides the baseline land use recommendations for all properties throughout Fairfax County. The map is color-coded to identify recommendations for density levels of residential use, mixed uses, and also the placement for various types of non-residential uses throughout the county, such as commercial uses, industrial uses, and public facilities. On this view of the map, the subject site is shaded in pink to represent its current office use recommendation, and then the orange shading that surrounds the site, it represents the low density residential uses in the Pemmon Hills neighborhood that are planned at 2 to 3 and 3 to 4 dwelling units per acre. Other land use categories that you can see on this map include the brown shading for mid-range densities that are other mid-range density developments that are located on nearby sites on either side of Leesburg Pike. The guidance found in the area plan volumes also provides more in the comprehensive plan's land area plan volumes also provide more detail to the map recommendations, and in some cases those recommendations include alternative plan options for development, such as the proposal that we will be discussing tonight. Next slide, please. So this aerial map flips back. I mean, this slide flips back to the aerial map, but we've overlaid some of the information with this aerial to describe the land use recommendations for the adjacent properties around the subject site. So again, you'll see that the nearest properties in Pemmon Hills are planned at 3 to 4 dwelling units per acre, and the neighboring church site is also planned at 3 to 4 dwelling units per acre. And to the south, Marshall High School is planned as public facilities, and there are low-rise office uses to either side of Marshall High School, and there's a variety of multifamily and also single-family attached residential units at 16 to 20 dwelling units per acre, and also the similar 12 to 16 dwelling units per acre that is being proposed for this site. Next slide, please. So this slide is just provides an idea of what the comprehensive plan does not do. The plan recommends how land should be used, but it does not specify when development will occur. And the plan provides general guidance for land uses as an advisory document, but it does not equate to being regulations or law. Next slide, please. So we'll take a look at some of the planning and development terms that are used, and density, intensity, and floor area ratio, or FAR, are commonly used terms that refer to the quantity of development, but they do not determine the forms in which development will take shape. Next slide, please. Density is used when discussing residential development. There are 12 different density ranges that are used in the Fairfax County Comprehensive Plan, and the images in this slide are being used to provide visualizations of 3 different ways that density could be established on a 1-acre site through single-family detached homes, single-family attached homes, and multifamily apartments. Next slide. So going back to the board's authorization for that gives priority to high quality open space on the site, I just wanted to provide some of the comprehensive plan guidance that defines and also uh, establishes the role of the open space has in residential development. And the policy plan guidance provides a definition in the glossary, page 12, for open space, and the definition is defined as any land which is preserved which is provided or preserved for park or recreational purposes, conservation of land or other natural resources, historic or scenic purposes, and also assisting in the shape, character, direction, and timing of community development. Next slide, please. So when we're considering amendments to the comprehensive plan, uh, this exhibit shows the flow of the process, and the proposal for land use changes are being reviewed for this particular plan amendment as a board authorized plan amendment because it was not added to the work program as a nomination during the site specific plan amendment cycle. These types of plan amendments follow the typical process that begins with impacts analysis performed by staffs who represent the various county agencies that are involved in the land use planning process. Concurrent review of a plan amendment with the rezoning also allows a potential developer to submit more detailed levels of information than what is normally provided for standalone plan amendments. However, it should be noted that concurrency is not always required for plan amendments, and in most cases, in many cases, plan amendments can be initiated to update the land use recommendations without having a formal plan for development. So as the site exists today with the office use, there's a combined gross floor area of 167,274 square feet at an intensity of approximately 0.57 FAR. The current plan recommends office use for the site, and the C2 zoning designation currently allows for up to 145,531 square feet of development. And it should just be noted that the difference in what would typically be allowed for zoning relates to the fact that this building was built prior to current zoning requirements, and also prior to the in the plan recommendations were made after the office was already in place, because it was built in 1976. So the proposed plan amendment is for 12 to 16 dwelling units per acre, which could yield up to 107, up to a maximum number of 107 dwelling units. But the development proposal currently proposes 104 dwelling units with a proposal for 9 affordable dwelling units. Next slide, please. So as we take a look at the comprehensive plan guidance that is being considered for this plan amendment, this is a listing of the some of the primary points that staff analysis is considering, and that is compatibility, open space, and tree preservation, stormwater management, historic resources, and also transportation and site access. Next slide, please. So the area plan and planning for the Pemmit Hill Pemmit planning sector identifies the Pemmit sector as being largely developed as single-family residential neighborhoods, and it recommends that infill development in that sector be of compatible use, type, and intensity in accordance with the guidance provided by the policy plan under land use objectives 8 and 14. Next slide, please. So in addressing the Board of Supervisors' direction to consider the provision of high quality open space, the comprehensive plan will not only consider the amount of open space that is being proposed, but staff's analysis will also ensure that the space that open space is publicly accessible with connections for access by on-site residents as well as visitors from the neighboring community. The image to the right is the most recent concept plan showing how open space can be provided on the site to serve both active and passive open space needs. Active open space should provide adequate space for opportunities to for a it should provide adequate space and opportunity for a variety of activities, including community gatherings, exercise, and play, or simply relaxing. Passive open space should support the overarching goals of achieving neighborhood compatibility by offering areas for natural tree preservation, transitional screening, and buffers between uses between the site and uses on adjacent properties, and also maintaining interior tree canopy to balance the impacts of on-site development. Next slide, please. So the next in the list of considerations was for the environment. And with high quality open space, there are no I'm sorry, with high quality open space, there are more opportunities for natural stormwater management approaches to be incorporated into a development. Environment analysis first seeks to mitigate the potential impacts of redevelopment on the subject site to the Pemmit Run watershed. The environment element of the policy plan encourages new development and proposals for redevelopment to apply better site design and low impact development techniques to reduce stormwater runoff volumes and peak flows, and to increase groundwater recharge, and also to increase preservation of undisturbed areas. Additional considerations for mitigation of traffic, noise, and green building certification for new residential developments are also found in the environment element of the current policy plan. Next slide, please. Leesburg Pike is designated as an enhanced public transportation corridor. Fairfax County Department of Transportation is currently looking into repurposing the two of the newly planned lanes per the comprehensive plan along Leesburg Pike with a median running bus rapid transit or BRT system. Proposed BRT stop, the nearest proposed BRT stop is currently proposed at Patterson Road and Route 7, which is the signalized intersection at the Trader Joe's parking lot to the east. The Board of Supervisors also requested the Department of Transportation to look at another possible BRT station somewhere in between Ramada Road and George C. Marshall Drive along the frontage of Leesburg Pike. The Trails Plan calls for a 10-foot shared use path along the side of Leesburg Pike, and the Department of Transportation staff feels that the site offers a good location for placement of a bike share location as well. Because the planned widening project and shared use path construction will eliminate the existing service road that provides the current point of access to the site, FCDOT's analysis is also that they would like to see any development of the site consider solutions that could help mitigate the loss of access from the signalized intersection of Leesburg Pike and George C. Marshall Drive. Next slide, please. So this slide provides a look at the current capacity, calculated increase, and 5-year projections for schools that serve the area of the where the plan amendment is proposed, the subject site where the plan amendment is proposed. And looking at the information here, you'll see that currently Marshall High School has sufficient capacity, which is at a level that's identified as 91%. Kilmer Middle School is at capacity at approximately 100%, and Westgate Elementary has a capacity surplus of 82%. So at the proposed density range, Marshall High School the student yield at Marshall High School could be an increase of 11 to 15 new students. And at Kilmer Middle School, it could be 5 to 7 new students, and 21 to 28 new students could potentially be introduced at Westgate Elementary School. And the overall calculation of new students that are projected is at a range of 35 to 50 new students. And it's also important to note that the current capacity numbers that are provided at the top of the slide do not include consideration for the proposed plan amendment. Next slide, please. So another consideration that's of staff's analysis is the fact that Pemmon Hills neighborhood has been recommended for possible inclusion on the inventory of historic sites. And also the existing office building was awarded an AIA Merit Award in 1978, and AIA is the American Institute of Architects. Next slide, please. So for the next few slides, I just wanted to provide a view of a few views of the existing building. And these photos are taken from a point in the center of the building, and then in the center of the circular building, and then from outside of the circular building and towards the center. Next slide, please. So these are views of the western property line. The view to the left is closer to Leesburg Pike, and then the second view on the right is near the center of the property and looking back toward the rear of the property, which is actually looking toward the north. Next slide, please. These slides provide views into the site from the frontage along Leesburg Pike, and also from the current access road that leads to the office building. Next slide, thank you. So here's a glimpse of the schedule. Of course, today is July 29th, and we are here at the community meeting to provide this information to the public, and also receive any comments or questions about the proposed plan amendment. And the public hearings that have been scheduled for the plan amendment are Wednesday, September 29th. It'll be going to the Planning Commission at the meeting at 7:30 p.m. And then on Tuesday, October 19th, it'll be going to public hearing at the Board of Supervisors at 4 p.m. And the rezoning is currently scheduled for Wednesday, October 27th at the Planning Commission. And the time says 7:30, but I believe that time should actually be, I mean, the time says 7 o'clock, but I believe it should actually be 7:30. And the Board of Supervisors hearing for the rezoning is still to be determined, because the rezoning is still currently under review. So I'd like to thank you all. I look forward to hearing any questions or comments from the public after Evan provides his presentation for on behalf of the development team. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Stephen. Are you going to share our slides as well, or do I share them?
I think Laura has them, so she can load them up if need.
Yeah, Evan, I'm happy to do it. Just give me a heads up when you want me to change the screen.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Laura. Well, first of all, I'll just introduce myself for those in the crowd, or on the phone or on video. My name is Evan Goldman. I'm the Executive Vice President of Acquisitions and Development for UIA. Thank you, Stephen, for the overview presentation. I'm going to give a little bit of detail about the plans that we've been proposing and meeting with the community about for the last year or so. And we're pretty excited about the project, and our hope is to move forward with this shortly. So I can go to the next slide. So the current site plan, as you can see right here, we're proposing townhomes on the site. The current office building that's there today is largely vacant. They've had a really hard time leasing the building for a number of reasons. Number one, just office demand in suburban locations is not particularly high. The building itself is fairly obsolete. It was an interesting idea that it was built as a circle, but as anyone who's ever tried to furnish a room knows, designing in a circle is not great when you're trying to fit out an office space. So so the building had issues from the beginning. And so we had this idea about a year ago. We started talking to the neighbors directly affected by the project. In fact, really working with the 11 single-family houses that directly surround the site, as well as the church on our other side, and then worked with the Pimment Hills board and the Pimment Hills community quite extensively. The feedback we'd initially gotten, and this is what's informed the plan that you're seeing, was the desire to make sure that we were preserving trees, which we've done a great job of doing. There was a support for the concept of residential next door to existing residential versus a commercial use. People were thrilled to see that the traffic generated by this project will be about 40% of the traffic of the existing office building. And so we got very positive reviews, and with that, we've been moving forward for the past year. And so this plan, what it shows you is a fairly symmetrical townhome layout. Most of the townhomes are between, oops, sorry, I think there's like an email popping up. There we go. Most of the townhomes here will be 16 foot or 20 feet wide, 3 to 4 bedroom houses. And we really focused on open space and how we can have the open space, something that's welcoming to the community. So there's a playground on the far right that's up against near where the church is. There is a meditative garden we'll talk about in a moment, and then a big open green space in the center. And all of our open spaces on all of our projects that we build are open to the general public. UYA as a company, we don't gate our communities. We believe in kind of creating urbanity, and so the community was happy to hear that as well. Go to the next slide. So project benefits, we've talked a little, I've presented a little bit about this, but the idea is we're replacing an obsolete, fairly empty building. It's a residential use next to a residential use, which makes sense contextually. Major traffic trip reduction, and I believe the counts that we had done at least were took the old office counts down by 60%. So 40% of the traffic that had been assumed from this building will be generated by the new project. So that's a nice benefit on Route 7. Major increase in green space and open space. Most of the site today is asphalt, and so we'll be returning a good amount of it to open space, but we'll also be dramatically improving the stormwater management that's on the site. Minimal school impact. Our townhomes tend to have even less children than the county standard. So the numbers that Stephen was talking about were the county standard, and our projects were typically about half that, just because most of our units, especially in this location where we'll have elevators, will end up being empty nesters. I shouldn't say most, at least half of our units here will end up being empty nesters, if not more, people without children, and then we will have some families too. But we typically have, given the elevator product in this type of project, we'll typically have a lot less kids. There's affordable housing as well as new market rate housing, and tree preservation on both the east side, the west side, as well as the back. This plan, we're not showing the existing plan, but essentially everything that's being developed is where the asphalt is today. And so we're really preserving the vast majority of trees surrounding the site, which will be just great for both the new homeowners as well as the existing. And go to the next slide. So you can keep going to parks and open space. The next slide. So we'll have one big central green space that'll be an open lawn, as well as kind of a hardscape zone. And then what you're seeing in the back, that pergola space, it's a little bit hard to see this small, I apologize. But we're creating kind of an open, a trellised space with furniture underneath it and a fire pit, kind of an outdoor social gathering space that will be right at the rear of the park space. And then you can see in the distance, there's a big green tree. It just happens that a really beautiful tree lines up directly with the view of our new park. And so we're preserving the tree and creating kind of a viewing platform towards that tree. So what will be nice about this park is on day one, the vista will be towards this really pretty mature tree and pretty forest beyond that. You can go to the next slide. The left side of the site, there'll be exercise equipment as well as kind of a meditative open space. We're looking at equipment that'll allow you to do crunches, allow you to do balance exercises, and then that'll be kind of a quieter space because it's up against the backyards of single family homes on the other side. And so we've kept that the more quiet oriented space versus the playground, which we put on the other side near the church. You can go to the next slide. And this side is the more active playground space. The feedback we've gotten from the community was that there was a lack of older kid play equipment in the area, that there was plenty of little top lots for very young kids. And so we've geared our equipment choices more towards, you can see on the bottom right, these kind of heavier climbing pieces of equipment. And so that's our thought here is whether it is the existing occupants or the neighbors surrounding us, that this could be a playground that's used specifically more for older elementary school kids versus the little kids. You can go to the next slide. Along Route 7, we have quite a bit of topography from Route 7 up to the first houses and a pretty big setback as well. Stephen already mentioned that the BRT will come through and create a widening of Route 7 there in order for the BRT to have its dedicated lanes. But that still leaves us a really nice big open space that we can landscape in an attractive way all the way up to the center portal. And then we've created this kind of terrace lookout space. One of the items I didn't share at the beginning is we have a walking loop going through the entire site and then through the woods in the back as well. And so that walking loop, which will allow people to get exercise on the site, goes out towards this terrace zone as well and allows people to take a break. There'll be benches throughout as well, so people can kind of, if they need to take a rest, if we have some seniors in the community that need a little bit of rest along their walk, we'll have plenty of benches as well. Go to the next slide. Proximity and screening. So this was probably the thing that we worked on most closely with our next door neighbors. You can see on the left, that's an existing single family house behind the project. And every single family, I would say every single family homeowner that we were able to get in touch with, because a lot of the houses are rented out, was supportive of the project, which we're very excited about. You can see the existing house today, and then our site actually sits much further below their house from a topography perspective. So we'll be building a retaining wall to hold up the rear yards of the back houses that exist today. And then our townhomes, you can see pictured on the right, even though they're 4-story homes, are actually not much taller than the existing houses, and they're shorter than the existing office building. So we're lower in height here as well. You can go to the next slide. And you'll see an even more stark differentiation as you get further into the back of the site. The existing houses are actually taller than our proposed houses. And once again, our houses are lower than the existing office building, so less of a nuisance, and you can see the trees that we're preserving as well. You can go to the next slide. So that's the overview of the presentation. And obviously tonight is really staff's presentation about the comprehensive plan, but to the extent people have questions about our proposed plan, I'm happy to answer them as well.
Thank you, Evan. And I understand that Supervisor Faust was able to join us during the presentation, so he's also here to listen in to our guests as we open the floor up for any discussion and questions now. So if anyone has a question we would that you would like to ask with audio, please, if you look to the lower right hand corner of the box on the right of the screen, there's a hand symbol, and you can click on that to raise your hand, and we can call on you.
Okay, this is Laura. I think Connie Cordovia has a question. Connie, I've unmuted you.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm just wondering where you're planning for these people to park and their guests to park, because so many times you go into these developments and, well, you got a nice 2-car garage and you maybe have one spot in front of your house. And it's a kind of a disaster if you have multiple people coming.
The
Sorry,
plan. Oh, I'm sorry.
did you want me to answer that more specifically, or the plan?
Oh, I directed it at you, Evan.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I'm happy to answer that. So we, in a lot of our communities, we ask for a parking reduction. We're not doing that here. We're meeting the requirements. So every house will have 2 parking spaces dedicated. The HOA regulations will require that people use their own parking garages, not street parking, for their own cars. And that'll be, their cars will get towed or they'll be fined through the HOA if they park their cars on the main street. And then as a result, we have 0.7 per unit, or almost about 70 visitor parking spaces in the site. So it's quite a bit of visitor parking. Most of our projects in our region are less than that. We're typically 2.3 to 2.5 spaces per unit. So we feel confident that we'll have ample parking on this site because of the way that Fairfax has dealt with that zoning code in this location. But thank you for the question.
Thank you.
And I'll just add that the plan amendment itself is not it's looking at the concept pretty much in general terms, but the rezoning application and the development plan are also under review, and part of that review is to make sure that adequate parking is being provided under the county's development standards and also zoning regulations. So I just wanted to add that.
And this is Laura. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. You can also type in the chat if it doesn't work, and we can call on you.
I see there's a hand raised with Mr. Paul Rothstein.
Okay. All right, Mr. Rothstein, you're unmuted.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was curious, how did you get that number? I saw in the McLean Citizens Association resolution that there's a proffer to Fairfax County schools based on the number of students added here. And I'm just curious, how did you come up with that proffer?
Does staff want to answer that, or do you guys want me to answer that?
I guess on behalf of staff, I'd just like to note that any proffers that have been submitted by the developer is still under review, and the information that was provided to the McLean Citizens Association was provided by the developer to them. So the review of the rezoning and also the development plan is still underway. So as of now, the information that MCA has seen has not been approved yet. So I just want to.
Yeah, sorry, just to add in, this is Joseph Onibuchi. I'm the reviewer for the rezoning, and just to echo what Stephen was saying, is that we are still reviewing the previous approvals for this case, and so we're still doing our research. And so any of the proffers that are for this site, I guess the developer could speak to, but just with the understanding that we are still reviewing everything at this point. So we'll take a look at that. But Evan, if you want to go ahead and answer that question, just so we can ensure that we're answering Mr. Rothstein's question, would be great.
Certainly happy to. Yeah, we worked with Rick Fry, who I think is on the call from the McLean Citizens Association, as the case manager for the project. And there is a standard calculation based upon the number of students that you would generate for a project on how much your payment to the school system will be. And so that's how it's been calculated. Based upon the number of children that would be generated by the project, you multiply that by, I can't remember the exact number, I think it was like 7,800 a kid or something like that. And that comes up with the amount of the proffer. And I believe Rick calculated himself and we calculated it, and we generally came up with the same number, if I remember correctly.
Can we get the formula for that? That's something that interests me, because it's interesting to me to see how a school is calculated when it is oversubscribed as opposed to undersubscribed, and to what extent, for example, a ranking of that school in the U.S. News or whatever would be, because one might imagine a more highly ranked school would tend to attract more people per unit than a more low ranked school. So I'd be interested to see exactly what that formula is.
Mr. Rothstein, this is Kathy Lewis from Zoning Evaluation. You would need to contact the school board. They're the ones who provide that formula. They're the ones who are constantly refining it and looking at it. It's a county-wide formula.
Right, but the developers are also coming. Mr. Goldman just said that the developers had their own formula as well, and that it was similar.
No, it's sorry, Paul, you misunderstood me. The formula
No,
is
they do not.
Okay.
Right. It's what the school board says, so you'll need to talk to them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. I have another hand up. I see Miss Cheryl Sim. All right, you're unmuted.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Supervisor Faust. Good evening, Ben. Good evening, Evan. I'm watching this because I own a property just off of McGarity Road. And generally speaking, I like this idea. I think that building has been a curiosity, at least every time I've driven past it for a long time. But Evan, I'm really kind of curious about the assumptions that you're making that a 3 to 4 bedroom townhome is going to be inhabited largely by empty nesters. My own observations are that these kind of homes are often shared by young people. And as the other speaker indicated about parking, I'm kind of looking at this wondering about whether or not there's adequate parking. Because you won't have any prohibitions against 3 or 4 people renting one of these from an owner. So that's one of my questions. And then going back to the schools, I'm also curious if anyone is looking at the cumulative impact, because I know there are other developments taking place up and down McGarity Road that are going to feed kids into Westgate and Marshall, et cetera. So it's nice to have these small numbers generated. But when it's all said and done, there's a heck of a lot of development going on in this general area. But again, I don't have any overt negative reactions to this. I'm just curious about these few points. Thank you.
I'll just note that the numbers that are provided by the Fairfax County Public Schools by their planners, it gives consideration for the current plan for development on sites, and it also takes a look at any existing entitlements that approved development up through the time when the numbers were provided. So I think the numbers that they were working off of originally were from 2020, and the numbers will also be updated in 2021. But the numbers that are provided in our presentation, they don't just look at what's on the ground now. They look at what may have also been approved through other zoning processes as well, in plan development processes. So I just wanted to provide that note.
Thank you.
And then I can answer the question. So you're right that there are townhome projects in the county that do have shares of different families living together, or different roommates or that sort, or a younger profile. And those typically tend to be less expensive or surface park townhome projects, often owned for rent. We built 47 projects in the region in our 20 some odd year history. We have a lot of experience building projects of this type at this economic profile. And in fact, we have a number of sites directly across the river in Bethesda and great schools, similarly located, very similar demographics. And so we have enough data to back up our assertions about who tends to buy. And usually what happens for our project types, we have some projects that don't have elevators, and those tend to have more families. They tend to be less expensive. When we provide the elevator, since there's such a lack of empty nester product in the market and in the region in general, it's very hard for seniors in their 70s to find a place to live and that they can age in place. When we offer the elevator option, they tend to go relatively quickly to empty nesters. And in this location, given the location and the lack of product for that specific market, we made the decision here to go with the elevators and the larger units. We will have smaller units here too. We'll have some 16-foot wide 3-bedroom units that probably will attract young couples or some younger families, we definitely will generate kids. So I don't want to say that we won't. But when we've done projects of this type, we tend to have a lot more empty nesters because there's just such a lack of product type in the market for those types of folks. And also because, I mean, think about the single family market in this area that has started to turn over, single family homes that are selling, and your options as a senior is to either move to a rental building, a condo, which there aren't that many of, quite frankly, or to gives you the ability to have that privacy with an elevator. And in our projects, we have very few situations where you have, because of the price of the unit, it's typically a family, an older empty nester couple or a young dual income, no kids family purchasing the unit just because of the price of the units. In this market, we do build less expensive product and more affordable product throughout the region. This is going to be one of the higher end projects that we're building.
Well, that was my other question, Evan. I mean, I know this isn't don't have final approval, but I find the affordable dwelling units to be rather paltry in number. And the way you're talking, it sounds like these are going to be townhomes priced over $1 million or such. But as you know, the market in Pimmet, the single family homes that were built 50, 60 years ago are selling for $800,000, $900,000. So I am curious if you can let us know what the your marketing price point is going to be.
Sure. Yeah, the price points of these houses will be around 800 to probably $1 million, maybe $1.1 million for the biggest houses. But yeah, typically around 800 to $1 million. And we are providing affordable housing per the county requirement. And so, it's 100% within the regulation of exactly how you calculate the affordable housing units, and we're happy to do that. And we do mixed income and affordable housing projects all throughout the region. So, and we do have other projects. We're building a project not far from here in Grant Park on Route 50, where we have less expensive product type, less expensive units. And so every project we build is a little bit different.
Okay, thank you.
All right, this is Laura. If everyone who's already asked the question, you have to unraise your hand in the chat. So if you wouldn't mind unraising your hand, unless you have another question, I'll move back on. Thank you, I appreciate that. I do have a couple more questions from the chat. The first question is from Douglas Lewis. What is the small building in the middle and the front of the central green space? I'm assuming he's talking about that brick paved area.
Yeah, that's not a building. Sorry, that's a hardscape zone with movable furniture and seating. It's just pavers. It's not a building.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Hari Kurup. Is there any change in traffic signal system or a flyover planned to reduce the traffic merging issue to Pimmet Hills from 495, at least during construction time? I'm assuming that's a question for our transportation folks.
So the question is if there would be flyover traffic from which area, sorry?
It's a change in traffic signal system or a flyover plan to reduce traffic merging issue to Pimmet Hills from 495.
Don't know about that right now. Right now we're just looking at the plan amendment, but that would probably be looked at further down the road, I believe.
All right, so looking at the chat, looking at any hands raised, I don't see anyone else at this time. Can we wait another minute or two?
Yes, and I'm sorry, Laura. With my presentation, I think I forgot to have you flip to the final slide, which should be a slide that provides my contact information and also the website for the plan amendment. So any attendees can write that information down too if you have any further questions, and if questions come in and I'm not the correct person in county staff to answer those questions, I'll make sure that those questions go to the correct agency. think it was slide 24.
I had it pulled up. I just was not sharing it.
No. So again, this is my contact information, and if any additional questions come about after tonight's meeting, please feel free to contact me or call me at the number at the bottom of the screen.
Laura, were there, this is Leanna O'Donnell with the Planning Division. Were there any other questions? I just wanted to check.
I don't know if Connie Cordovia still has a question. She has a question by her name. Let me ask. Connie, did you still have a question?
Well, I wanted to know how much they were going to cost, but it also occurred to me, are they they're multi-level homes, right? And they don't have an elevator in them? So I'm assuming you're talking about people in the 50 to 70-year-old category when you're talking about empty nesters. And I'm not sure that's going to be.
So Connie, actually, so about half, if not more, probably more than half of the houses have elevator options.
Oh.
They are 3-story houses with a 4th-story loft and outside rooftop deck.
Yeah.
So the smaller houses don't have an elevator, but the larger houses have an elevator option and a place for the elevator to go in the house.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So not seeing any more questions. I'd like to thank everyone for attending tonight. Thank everyone from county staff, and also thank Supervisor Faust for joining us. And again, my contact information has been shown, and if there are any questions, please feel free to contact me. And within the next few days, we should have a recording of this meeting, and also, well, I'm not sure if the recording will need to go up, but we will have access to the we will have links providing access to the presentations that were provided tonight. So, and again, if there are no questions, I think on behalf of everyone, I'll say good night. Thank you.
Thank you.